Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fresh Brewed Kentucky Politics. Today we're going to be covering some great subjects. We had our first hearing on Cooperrider v. Beshear today. Kind of give you guys an update what's going on there. We've got a little movement we had yesterday on the AG filing in the Court of Appeals with the Judge Shepard situation to give you guys an update on. As well, what's at the top of the ticket? What's everybody talking about? Well, they're talking about gun control. And, I just figured I should discuss about gun control a little bit. But before we get down into it, if you guys want to support us, please hit the share button and share this out. Let more people listen. Also, this is a podcast as well. It's on Apple and Spotify. Share that. Let people know we exist. Let people know there is a conservative voice to listen to in Kentucky that does podcasts. I personally haven't found a popular one, but if you guys find one, let me know. I'd be interested to hear a real conservative in Kentucky. All the supposed conservatives I hear sound just more like Democrats to me. I don't know, though. I could be going crazy. But let's dig down into it. We had our first day of court today. Oh, by the way, everybody come by for coffee at some point or whatever. Support us. Buy our coffee online. Shop.brewedco.com. BREWEDCO.com. Okay. So we had our first day in court today, and let me tell you, this was a little bit of an interesting experience to say the least. Right now, obviously, with COVID going on and everything else, things are a little weird, a little limited. So I had to go in. Rather than sitting there and fighting with them, of course, I did, unfortunately, and I know you guys are going to show me a lot of hate here, but please forgive me. I did wear a mask today, for I was more interested in sitting down and hearing what goes on in Cooperrider v. Beshear than I was getting into an argument about masking. It is funny. I am obviously not a fan of masking. I find it to be quite an interesting phenomenon that we are still doing this, and it's silly and stupid. However, I do find it interesting when I hear people claim there's some sort of constitutional argument behind why you can't wear a mask. I'm sorry, that just doesn't exist. I know you guys are going to tear me apart. You're going to write comments, or you're like, no, it does. Let me quote this or that, and I hear you, and I read that. All I know is I have not seen anybody not wear a mask in a courtroom. I haven't seen anybody get away with it yet. And I'm sure with all the lawyers out there in this country, there is one that surely would be fighting about how they don't have to wear a mask in the courtroom unless they have a medical exemption. And we might talk about that here in a second, medical exemptions. But first, let's talk about our first day of hearing. So we show up there, and there is a person who's working with Chris Weiss and myself on this case. Anna Weitz is a lawyer. She's representing the Daniel Cameron petitioners as well as the Goforth petitioners. And though I agree that Goforth shouldn't be in office, I think honestly, if you think Robert Goforth, after reportedly strangling his wife with an Ethernet cord, should still hold office in Kentucky, you are part of the problem. You have compromised away your values a long time ago. But putting that to the side, going into Daniel Cameron, those petitioners there, I cannot disagree with them more. As a grand jury, you have a lot of abilities, and if you don't like the way something's being done, you want to know what the laws are, you want to know what you can charge people with, you want to even issue subpoenas as a grand jury, you can do those things. To be upset and wanting him impeached because he didn't say something you think he should have said in court, quite frankly, doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but we'll leave that to the side here. So, the few things that we saw there in court, first off, it just appeared like the governor's lawyers that he sent down, to me, they were nice enough guys. I'm sure their souls have been sucked out of them. And shout out to you guys. I'm sure when you saw me today, you weren't expecting me to necessarily be there. But I know you guys working in the governor's office have surely been paid to scroll my Facebook before. In fact, I'm sure that legal helper guy, intern guy that they had there, whoever he was, I'm sure he's had to scroll my Facebook probably one too many times. You're the real hero. Thanks for sticking in there and checking me out. And be sure to share me too. You know, you have to watch me anyways. Might as well share me, right? But anyway, so they're in there, and you know, honestly, it appears to them like their life has just left their eyes to me. And this is what I mean by that. They've got these cases going on in front of Judge Shepard, where really what the governor's doing with Judge Shepard's consent is quite ridiculous, and they know it, and it is trampling all over the laws, and they are selling out their oaths, and they know it. And that is part of maybe why the life and excitement for working for the wonderful Governor Beshear has left their eyes. But also probably partly to do with the fact that, well, quite frankly, this is a bad case for them. Like, I'll tell you how bad this case is, okay? So despite the fact that we had so much more standing in our impeachment petition to the point where the impeachment committee themselves said, yes, the governor broke the Constitution. Yes, he did. We just lack the stones to actually catch him for it. So outside of that being the case, they also, this is such a bad case that A.G. Cameron, even though his was far more frivolous than ours is, in my humblest of opinions, he didn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. They asked him not once, but twice for his impeachment cost bill. And Cameron was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not messing around with this. Why am I not? This is clearly a constitutional violation. It clearly says in the First Amendment that citizens have the right to petition their government for redress. What is an impeachment petition but asking the governor for redress? And I'm sorry, when it's spelled out in the First Amendment, you don't get to charge me $42,000 for me to have my rights. It's a right. You can't infringe upon it. It defaults to me. That's what it means. And so the Attorney General, knowing that this is a rake he does not want to step on, didn't even bother trying to file in this case because he knew this was going to be a tire fire. I tell you how much it's going to be a tire fire. And I know that perhaps Wiest, the great and powerful Chris Wiest, is dealing and talking with the House clerk a little bit. And I don't know exactly what's going on there. But to give you an idea, the House clerk, the House attorneys didn't even show up to this hearing. The only people who showed up to this hearing were our attorneys and then the governor's office, because they're the only one. He's such a child. He's the only one that's going to stick with a case that should be dismissed right off the bat. He's the only one who's going to stick with this. Part of the reason why is because we trolled him into doing it. Why do you think it's called Cooperrider v. Beshear? Because he's tired of losing to me. He already lost. We already trolled him into opening indoor dining an entire month earlier than I'm sure he wanted to in the state of Kentucky. He already lost there. For those of you who want to say, no, he just opened it. He opened dining on the highest record day. It was the record highest COVID count day. It was the record highest case count day. He didn't want to open up indoor dining. Brood had embarrassed the crap out of him, and he was facing 1,000 more restaurants that signed a petition saying they were going to open. It was a losing proposition for him to keep fighting with me, and so he opened it up rather than keep the fight going because he knew he would lose. He knew he would lose. It is not a popular public opinion to throw people in jail for running a restaurant. It's just not. It's just not a popular opinion. And yet here we find Cooperrider v. Beshear, another case he will lose. I almost promise you. This may not age well, but I'm pretty sure it will. One way, one how, some way, this will end up wherever it ends up. He will probably lose this case. Everybody else has pretty much dropped it. I mean, the AG hasn't even gotten involved, and the clerk, I don't know what they're doing, but they're just kind of sitting by the wayside. Like I said, they don't even show up to the hearing. But he will stay in this, and he will keep going down this road, and his lifeless staff that literally hate what they're doing at this point, that have been sitting across from Chris Wiest for the last year, getting their butts beat, that have been having to scroll through my Facebook that are tired of losing to just a couple of citizens because their governor, their fearless leader, has no concept of what the Constitution means, and he's a petulant little child who will roll around on the ground throwing a fit about something, all because he doesn't want to lose to this guy or that guy. I'll tell you this much. I'm allowed to keep trolling the governor. I'm just a citizen. But for the governor to have such a way about him, keep this kid friendly, that he would rather sit there and take on a losing battle, one that everybody knows he's going to lose. I mean, the judge didn't say much, but what he said was, he said this. He did say this. He said, I don't expect you guys to take any action in circuit court. In fact, I really don't think you should take action in circuit court to collect these charges. And then the governor's attorneys agreed on the record that they wouldn't do it. That while the litigation was going on, they wouldn't try to go to the circuit court to collect up the impeachment costs. Why? Because the judge sitting there being like, guys, geez, I can read the First Amendment and this doesn't look good. And that's the bottom line. And whether you agree or disagree or what have you with it, at the end of the day, it is quite clear that you cannot, this goes back even pre-Constitution, this goes back to the Magna Carta. You don't get to charge citizens for their right to redress from their government. You don't get to charge them with the cost bill to do it. That's what our taxes are for. And yet somehow, watch this, this should really upset all the taxpayers. This man's obsession with not letting it go when you have lost. He wants his pound of flesh so badly. He can't let it go because he has maybe a 5% chance of winning. He's so bad at this. And what should really upset you guys as taxpayers is he's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. He already has. See, every time the government loses in a constitutional case, they get hit with a cost bill from the attorneys. They get hit with a cost bill from attorneys that unfortunately you taxpayers have to pay. Now, I think it's worth it. But on the same hand, I would be throwing a fit and I would be protesting outside the mansion that he keeps running up hundreds of thousands of dollars of attorney fees that the state has to pay because he can't stop violating the most basic rights. I mean, this is like the fourth or fifth time he's been in federal court over the last year for violating the First Amendment with Chris Weiss alone. That's just Chris Weiss here being on the other side of the table. Not to mention his state court issues. This should be alarming to you as taxpayers that your money keeps going to this. I would be upset. And speaking of interesting court case battles and the governor, and this is really probably what's taken the umph out of their step. That's what's really taking their umph out of their step. What's really taking it out of the governor's legal office is these cases in court where he's having Judge Shepard put some sort of weird injunctions on it. And the reason why it's so upsetting to them is because anybody who loves the law would be very upset about what's going on. And so we've got Judge Shepard here. So the AG put forward a dismissal for what's called case and controversy, and the legislators put forward a dismissal on legislative immunity. What's that mean? Quite simply put, case and controversy just simply means you got to have a case. There's got to be controversy here, right? So you can't just sue your UPS guy because the FedEx guy is making bad deliveries, right? The FedEx guy messed up delivering your package. You don't get to sue the UPS guy, okay? You got to have a case and controversy. There's got to be something to go after. Well, the problem with this case, the reason why the Judge Shepard injunction case of enjoining a law and the AG being named in it has case and controversy issues is because the AG doesn't do anything. The Attorney General literally, once a law is passed, doesn't do anything. You can't put a restraining order on the AG from doing something when it comes to a law. You first have to have a case occur. You first have to have the governor, this is how it should happen, as detailed in Daniel Cameron's filings, as I personally have been saying now for months, not months, but a while since this started. The legislators and AG don't do anything. How this should be heard is the governor makes a mandate and he shouldn't, and he tries to enforce it, and then that's heard in courts. Kind of like what Brood and Beans are trying to do, except we should have had an enforcement come in on us. Maybe that's why nobody has tried to enforce anything on us as we follow HB 1. As we follow those rules. But that's the way it should play out. But yet we have the AG as a named person in this case. Without him doing anything, without him he's saying, why do I have to? It's like the UPS guy being like, why am I defending what the FedEx guy is supposed to do? In this case, what's most interesting or ironic is the person who should be enjoined from doing something on a law that might be unconstitutional would be the governor. Who's the one that's bringing the order? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And then you have, and right now they just filed in the appeals court. But then you have the legislators saying, hey, listen, we have legislative immunity, which they do. That clearly states what the legislative immunity says is a belief that, and what a legislative immunity is a legal doctrine that says legislators can't be sued for all the actions that take place in the sphere of legitimate legislative activity. So essentially, you can't sue a legislator because they passed a law, even if that law is found unconstitutional, even if that law is considered to be wrong or what have you, and legislators pass it. You can't turn around and then sue legislators for passing that law. Go legislative immunity. Well, the governor's bringing suit against them. They have legislative immunity. You have case and controversy. And what we're being told is that while in the hearing, while on the record, Judge Shepard said something along the lines of that he believes there is a pandemic. With a pandemic going on, that changes things. That is why laws exist. Pandemics don't change anything. The law doesn't exist to follow only when it's easy. The Constitution doesn't only exist to follow when it's easy. The entire reason why it exists, is to stop these kinds of things from happening. It's to stop them from being able to do willy-nilly whatever they want when there's an emergency. It's very easy to follow the law when there's nothing controversial going on. But yet to say you think just because there's a pandemic going on that changes things, that never changes the law. It shouldn't. But yet long-term standings of in our court standards, case and controversy and legislative immunity, this judge is just thrown out the darn window. And hopefully we all realize whose fault this is. And this fault is ours. Because right now we have legislators that failed to impeach him when they had the opportunity. That could nip this in the bud. But of course, they didn't do that. And then, so one, it's us for electing people with no backbone for legislators. And then two, we now essentially have a long veto process. So we have a law that was passed as an emergency to take effect immediately that then gets vetoed and then gets voted back in. And now we get what's called, I don't know, a second veto where he gets to tie it up in court litigation that here it's been almost 2 months since the law's passed. And yet, it hasn't become law yet. That isn't how it works. The governor had a veto process already. And so here we've got a second veto that stretches out and can stretch it out and tie it up in court to the point that he may not even have, I pray that one day he doesn't have a reason to have put forward any more mandates. But it's our fault. Judge Shepard is elected. And yet, how many of you guys out there, and it's okay. It's okay. It's okay you feel this way. It's all right. It is not your fault that you feel this way, but it is your fault he's in there. Because how many of you said to yourselves, have ever said out loud, I don't pay attention to politics, they don't affect me? How many of you guys out there have said that? As you're sitting there, you're like, oh my gosh. I have said that. I have said that I don't follow politics because they don't affect me. Well, clearly they affect you. Clearly all those people in Franklin County voting for Judge Shepard should be paying more attention. Clearly the entire state should be paying more attention to who we're electing as judges. Most of you guys probably don't even know who you voted for over the last judge. And that's our fault. We need to pay better attention. We need to do better. We need to vote in better legislators that have a backbone. If you want to learn about doing that, go to the April 17th event at Brood. We need to do a better job of electing better judges. We need to do a better job of paying attention to who's in office more than just the president. Because you're starting to realize that checks and balances only exist as strong as the people who hold the offices that are supposed to check and balance are. And if some of you fawned over who's your check on the state government, who's your check on your governor, the legislators, or the check on the, both of them, the judicial, or the check on the governor checks both, we all know it's all checks and balances. If we start paying attention to who else is in charge of our checks and balances, not just the one guy at the top, whoever that may be, we'd see a better and different reaction than what we've seen. So we're responsible. We need to pay better attention. Moving nationally, let's talk gun control for a second. Gun control is at the top of the head. Everybody's talking about gun control, so I figured we'd talk about gun control. And there's several arguments I personally believe when it comes to gun control. I think you got to identify who you're talking to. So, first thing is you have to sit there and first have an argument with somebody and say, listen, you want to have gun control. Instead of first arguing over whether or not we should have gun control, we should start to recognize that we need to value that they have to follow the right process when it comes to gun control in the first place. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, the Constitution's clear. Shall not be infringed. Second Amendment. And so we should be standing by our Constitution and saying, listen, if you want gun control, you have to, the Founding Fathers provided us a way to have gun control. You have to change the Constitution. And there's a process to change the Constitution. And I would love for you to follow that. That should be the first thing. You should first ask, why is it that, shouldn't we just change the Second Amendment then if you've got an issue with it? That's an entire process to go through. But yet that's hard. And it's hard because it won't have enough support to be done. So rather than accepting the fact that I want something and I can't get it because I have to infringe on the rights of others, I sit there instead and say, hey, I want you to do something. I want you to break the Second Amendment and pass a gun law. And what's funny is the people that are pushing so hard for gun control, people of the left, don't even understand the history of gun control. Gun control put in place in the first place, and somebody can correct me if I'm super wrong, but all my research says this. The first gun control laws were enacted for racial reasons. The first licensing requirements were enacted for racial reasons. The first time somebody said you can't open carry is for racist reasons. They didn't want black people owning guns. That was why the first gun laws existed. They didn't want black people to own guns. Because gun control is the tool of tyrants. Gun control is the tool of tyranny. Because a 100-pound woman and a 500-pound man are equalized by that great Colt. They're equalized by the gun. And when this country wanted, or not this country, I'm sorry, when states were afraid of these racial minorities and they didn't want them gaining control, what they did was they took away the great equalizer, the gun, from them. They took away that great equalizer. That's the first thing they did. So I find it interesting that the people who push gun control are the same people that want to fight racism, not realizing they're putting forward some of the most racist policies that have ever been pushed. Because those people who need to protect themselves the most, and those people who are victims of others' actions the most, tend to be the same people they say they want to protect. And at the same time, they say that all the police are terrible and shooting and have this terrible problem shooting unarmed black men, which statistically that doesn't necessarily pan out, but police shooting unarmed anybody should be an issue. Apparently you want to up that. Because the only people you want to have guns at that point would be the police. So you think the police are terrible racists that just shoot unarmed black people, and then you want to make sure they're the only ones who have guns? Literally everybody the police shoot would be unarmed. It doesn't make any sense. So logically that doesn't make sense. And then let's follow up here. The gun control laws just don't work. Where this most recent terrible shooting in Colorado took place, they had a magazine capacity ban. They had a ban of private sales. They had universal background checks, red flag gun laws. And I believe, because they are near a school, I've heard, they were also in what's called a gun-free zone. In a gun-free zone. And I asked the question, if gun laws work so well, why didn't this guy stop? Why didn't he come in and say, oh my gosh, I'm in a gun-free zone? Right? Because they don't work, and they don't work because all the crimes you'd had to commit to get to this great crime would be lesser crimes. And the reason why you shouldn't just make it a crime anyways to say, well, you know, whatever, is because this law infringes, gun laws infringe upon the rights of law-abiding people. So the only real way, if you want to somehow stop all gun violence, would be to somehow get all guns off the streets. Would be somehow to collect up all guns. And the problem with that idea of banning all guns is the logistics. That's your first issue. I have not heard a single gun control proponent explain to me how you, in a nonviolent way, collect up the 400 million guns that exist in America, and over 50% of the households in this recent thing that I checked. How do you collect up those guns? I have yet to hear a proposal that works, because it doesn't work, nor should it. We have a Second Amendment right in this country. It's illogical to think gun control works. It's illogical to reach a point where it would work. It's illogical to think you're going to get all the guns taken up. It's illogical to think any of these things will work, because they don't. And meanwhile, while we're arguing back and forth about how many rounds you can carry and all these other things, we're not addressing the real issues, the real problems. And the real issues and the real problems are this. We have a mental health issue caused by the breakdown of the family. Caused by the breakdown of moral fiber in the country, and we need to address that. And I'm not saying that means that your lifestyle's wrong for those who are watching this and thinking, oh, well, because I don't have a normal lifestyle, that means he must think I caused gun violence. That's not what I'm saying at all. Everybody should be free to live their lives how they want to. But this idea that you've got to get approval from other people, and if they don't give that to you, that's their fault. And they're wrong. That's the problem. That's an issue. We need to look at that. Coming up on Friday, I'm going to be talking about all the vetoes the governor has gone through. Be going through that, going through some other news as far as it goes. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure to hit the share button if you're listening. Check us out on brewedco.com, brewedco.com. Buy some coffee. Come by the coffee shop. This is also available on a podcast. Also, as well, tomorrow evening, Charlie Kirk will be in town at UK. I'm going to make a post about that as soon as I get off. I thank you guys so much for joining me.